Someone in your life is being too easy on you. And that person is you. You let yourself off the hook in moments that required you to hold on. You accepted explanations for your own behavior that you would never accept from anyone else. You gave yourself permission to stay comfortable in situations that were quietly demanding that you grow. And the result of all that gentleness is a life that is smaller than it should be, a version of yourself that is softer than it needs to be, a gap between who you are and who you are capable of being that has been growing wider every year that you chose ease over the hard thing. This audiobook is about closing that gap. Not gently. The last soft version. Why life rewards the hard you. Introduction. The problem with being easy on yourself. There is a version of self-compassion that is genuinely useful. The kind that allows you to recover from failure without being destroyed by it. The kind that lets you acknowledge your humanity without using it as a permanent excuse. The kind that gives you enough stability to keep trying when trying is hard. And then there is a version of self-compassion that is just comfort wearing a therapeutic vocabulary. The kind that calls avoidance self-care, that calls stagnation acceptance, that calls the refusal to demand more of yourself a form of kindness when it is actually a form of abandonment. When you stop pushing yourself toward what you are capable of in the name of being gentle with yourself, you are not being kind. You are being negligent. The hard you is not the cruel you. It is not the punishing, relentless, never satisfied you that grinds itself into dust in pursuit of impossible standards. The hard you is the honest you, the one that sees clearly what you are capable of and refuses to pretend that less is acceptable. The one that holds the line when comfort says to let it go. The one that makes the difficult choice in the quiet moment when nobody is watching and nothing external is forcing the issue. That version of you is the one life rewards. Not because life is cruel, because difficulty is where capacity is built, and capacity is what everything worth having is built from. This audiobook is about becoming that version, permanently, without apology. Chapter 1. What soft actually costs you. Soft is invisible in the short term. You cannot see what the soft choice is costing you the day you make it. The discomfort avoided, the difficult conversation postponed, the standard lowered, the boundary not held, none of it announces its price immediately. It all feels like reasonable management of a complicated life. But soft accumulates. Every time you choose the easier path when the harder one was available, you are making a deposit into a specific account. Not a financial one, a character one. And the currency of that account is not money. It is capability, confidence, and self-respect. And the soft deposits reduce all three. Not because difficulty is virtuous in itself, because the decision to avoid difficulty, made repeatedly over time, sends a very specific message to the part of you that is tracking everything. It says that you do not trust yourself to handle hard things, that you need to be protected from the full demand of your own life, that the challenge is too large and you are too small for it. And eventually, you start to believe the message. This is how capable people end up living at a fraction of their capacity, not through one dramatic failure, through the accumulation of small, soft choices that slowly contracted the boundary of what felt possible until the contracted version started to feel like the real one. The cost of soft is not visible in the moment. It is visible in the pattern, in the life that keeps producing results below what you know you are capable of, in the self that cannot fully trust itself because it has too many memories of not following through, in the quiet but persistent sense that something is being withheld, not by the world, by you, from yourself. That is what soft costs. Chapter 2. The moment you became too easy on yourself. There was a specific moment. You probably cannot identify it precisely because it did not feel like a moment. It felt like a reasonable response to a difficult situation, a sensible adjustment, a necessary compromise. But somewhere along the way, you made a deal with yourself. A deal that said that a certain level of effort was enough, that a certain degree of discomfort was the maximum you were willing to tolerate, that certain dreams were too large or too risky or too far from where you currently were to be worth the full cost of pursuing. And the deal felt fair at the time. Maybe it even was fair at the time. Maybe the circumstances genuinely required a temporary pulling back, a conservation of energy, a strategic retreat. The problem is that the temporary became permanent without you noticing. The pulling back that was supposed to be a pause became a residence. The conservation of energy that was supposed to be temporary became the default. The strategic retreat that was supposed to regroup for a stronger advance became the place you stopped. And now you are living in what was supposed to be a rest stop, as if it is a destination. The first move of becoming the hard you is identifying the deal you made with yourself, finding the specific moment or period when you lowered the standard and telling the truth about why. Not to punish yourself for it, to understand it clearly enough to renegotiate it. Because a deal made by a younger or more frightened or more exhausted version of yourself does not have to bind the version of you that exists right now. You can renegotiate. You can raise the standard again. You can decide that what was enough then is not enough now and begin demanding more of yourself with the clarity and confidence that comes from understanding exactly why you stopped. Chapter 3. Hard is not what you think it is. When most people hear the word hard in the context of becoming a harder version of themselves, they picture something extreme. The person who sleeps 4 hours and works 20. The one who has eliminated all pleasure and comfort and human connection in service of a goal. The one who treats themselves and everyone around them with an iron coldness that confuses discipline with cruelty. That is not what hard means here, and that version of hard does not work anyway. It burns through the person living it faster than it builds anything lasting. The hard you is something more precise and more sustainable than that. The hard you does what they said they were going to do, even when the motivation is gone, even when the day is difficult, even when every reasonable argument in the world exists for doing it tomorrow instead. They do it today because they said they would, and because who they are is someone who keeps their word to themselves. The hard you does not negotiate with their own resistance. They acknowledge it and move through it. The resistance that says this is too difficult or this is not the right time or you deserve a break or what is the point is heard and then set aside. Because the hard you understands that resistance is not information about the task. It is information about the comfort zone, and the comfort zone is not in charge. The hard you hold standards for their work, for their relationships, for their own behavior, not impossibly high standards that guarantee failure, real standards that match what they are actually capable of when they are operating honestly, and they hold those standards on the days when it is easy and the days when it is not. The hard you makes decisions based on who they are becoming rather than how they feel right now, because feelings are real but they are not permanent. And the person who makes all their decisions based on how they feel in the moment is being governed by the most temporary and unreliable data available. This is what hard actually looks like. It is not dramatic. It is not cold or cruel or extreme. It is just consistent, honest, committed to the real standard even when the soft choice is sitting right there looking reasonable. Chapter 4. Building the hard version from the inside. You cannot build the hard you from the outside. You cannot buy the discipline. You cannot absorb it from a playlist or a morning routine or a specific set of habits borrowed from someone else's biography. Those things can support the process. They cannot replace it. The hard you is built from the inside, from a specific set of beliefs about yourself and about what you are willing to accept from yourself. The first belief is that difficulty is yours to handle, not anyone else's, not something to be managed by circumstances being more favorable or other people being more supportive or timing being more aligned. Yours. Whatever comes, whatever the conditions, whatever the challenge, you are the one who handles it, not because you are alone, because you are responsible, because you have stopped waiting for conditions to make things easier and started developing the capacity to handle things as they are. The second belief is that your word to yourself is sacred. Most people keep their promises to others at a much higher rate than they keep their promises to themselves. The commitment made to another person feels binding. The commitment made to yourself feels negotiable. But every time you negotiate away a promise to yourself, you are communicating something to the part of you that is tracking everything. You are saying that you are not someone who can be trusted, and a person who does not trust themselves cannot build anything of real significance. The hard you treats a promise to themselves with the same seriousness as a promise to the most important person in their life, because they understand that the most important person in their life is themselves, not in a selfish way, in a foundational way. Everything you give to anyone else comes from what you have built inside yourself first. The third belief is that the hard version is the real version. The soft version, the one that avoids and postpones and negotiates and explains, that is not the real you. That is the defended you, the protected you, the version that developed in response to pain or disappointment or the reasonable fear of trying too hard and still not being enough. The hard you is what remains when those defenses are no longer needed. When you have developed enough internal strength that you do not need to protect yourself from the full demand of your own life anymore. When you can meet the challenge directly, without armor or avoidance, because you trust yourself to handle whatever it brings. That version is not something you are becoming for the first time. It is something you are uncovering. It was always there, under the soft choices and the reasonable compromises and the deals that made sense at the time. It is waiting for you to let it lead. Chapter 5, The Standards Conversation. At some point in this process, you have to have an honest conversation with yourself about standards. Not the standards other people have set for you, the standards you have set for yourself, the internal benchmarks that determine what you accept from your own performance, your own behavior, your own output. And the honest question is whether those standards actually reflect what you are capable of. For most people, the answer is no. Not because they are lying to themselves, because standards drift. They erode slowly over time in response to repeated disappointment, accumulated fatigue, the quiet adjustment that happens when you have missed the mark enough times that the mark itself starts to feel unrealistic. You lower the standard to protect yourself from the pain of not meeting it, and then you lower it again, and again, until the standard you are living by bears almost no resemblance to what you are actually capable of when you are operating at your honest best. The hard you reverses this process, not by setting impossibly high standards that guarantee failure and self-punishment, by setting honest standards, standards that are genuinely aligned with your real capacity rather than your protected capacity, standards that require real effort to meet, but that you are actually capable of meeting on the days when you are operating with full intention. These honest standards are almost always higher than the standards you are currently living by, and meeting them will require more than you have been giving. But here is what you discover when you start meeting your honest standards consistently. You are not protecting yourself from failure by keeping the standards low. You are protecting yourself from your own potential, from the specific and vulnerable experience of giving your actual best and finding out what it produces, from the exposure of trying completely and seeing what completely looks like. The hard you is willing to be exposed like that, willing to give the real effort and find out what the real effort produces, because they understand that the answer, whatever it is more useful and more honest than the answer they get from protected effort meeting protected standards. Chapter 6, Discipline is not what they told you it was. Discipline has a reputation problem. It has been packaged and sold as a kind of aggressive self-force, a way of overpowering your own preferences and impulses through sheer willpower. A constant battle between the part of you that wants to do the hard thing and the part of you that wants comfort, with discipline as the weapon you use to defeat the comfort-seeking side. This version of discipline does not work long-term. You cannot sustain a war against yourself indefinitely. Eventually, the side that wants comfort wins because it is always there and always patient, and it knows that willpower is a finite resource that depletes with use. Real discipline is something different. Real discipline is a settled clarity about what matters to you and the natural prioritization that flows from that clarity. When you know clearly what you are building and why it matters and who you are becoming through the building of it, the disciplined choice is not a battle. It is an expression. It is you acting in alignment with something you genuinely care about rather than forcing yourself to do something that contradicts what you actually value. The person who has built real discipline is not white-knuckling their way through every difficult moment. They have aligned their values and their actions closely enough that the difficult choice and the authentic choice are usually the same choice. This is why the inner work comes before the behavioral work. You cannot build real discipline on top of a foundation of unclear values or borrowed goals or other people's definitions of success. The discipline collapses because it is not anchored to anything that is genuinely yours. But when you know what you are actually building and you have chosen it freely and honestly, and it is genuinely aligned with who you are at your core, the discipline takes care of itself. Not completely and not easily, but sustainably, because you are not fighting yourself. You are expressing yourself. Chapter 7, Hardness and Relationships. Becoming the hard you does not mean becoming the isolated you. This is a fear that stops some people from pursuing this kind of internal development. The fear that becoming harder, more disciplined, more demanding of yourself will somehow make you cold to the people you love. That the toughness required for real growth is incompatible with the warmth required for real connection. It is not. In fact, the hard you is usually a better relational person than the soft you, not in every way, but in the ways that matter most. The hard you shows up consistently. They do what they say they will do in their relationships as in everything else. They are reliable in a way that the soft you, governed by mood and comfort and the path of least resistance, often is not. The hard you holds boundaries, and this, counterintuitively, makes relationships better rather than worse, because relationships without real boundaries are not genuine relationships. They are management projects. They are performances of connection that are actually just two people trying to avoid conflict by never being fully honest about what they need and what they will not accept. The hard you brings their real self to relationships, not the performed self or the protected self or the self that has been adjusted to be easier for other people to digest. The actual self, with actual opinions and actual needs and actual limits. And this realness, even when it is uncomfortable, creates the conditions for actual intimacy, for the kind of connection that is built on genuine knowing rather than comfortable performance. The hard you loves differently, not less, more honestly, with less need and more choice, from a full self rather than a depleted one. And love given from a full self is simply more valuable than love given from an empty one. Chapter 8, When Life Tests the Hard You. Here is what you need to know before it happens. Life will test the hard you. Not as punishment, as verification. The universe is not hostile to your growth, but it is indifferent to your comfort. And the way things of value are verified is through the application of pressure. The new level of hardness you are building will be tested in a moment you did not see coming, in a circumstance that applies exactly the kind of pressure that your specific weak points are most vulnerable to, in a situation designed, not by any external intelligence, but by the simple mathematics of your particular growth edges, to find out whether the hard you is real or just a fair-weather construction. And in that moment, you will feel the pull back toward the soft version, the comfort-seeking, excuse-generating, standard-lowering soft version that knows exactly how to make retreat feel reasonable. What you do in that moment is the whole game. Not what you do on the days when it is easy to be the hard you. Not what you do when the conditions are favorable and the motivation is high and everything external is supporting the internal commitment. What you do on the day when none of that is true and the soft choice is sitting right there looking like the only sensible option. That is the day the hard you is built or dismantled. You cannot prepare for it by thinking about it. You can only prepare for it by building the practice now, in the ordinary days, so that the hard choice is worn enough into your character that it is available even under pressure. The test is coming. Build for it now. In the quiet days, in the moments that do not feel significant, because the significant moment will use exactly what you built in the moments that did not feel significant. Chapter 9, The Life That Hardness Builds. Let us be specific about what is on the other side of this process. The person who has genuinely become the hard version of themselves lives a different life. Not a perfect life. Not a life without difficulty or loss or failure, but a life with a specific quality that the soft life cannot produce. They wake up with respect for themselves. Not arrogance. Respect. The specific kind that comes from knowing you are someone who does what they say they will do, who holds their standards even when it costs something, who has chosen the real thing over the comfortable substitute enough times that it has become their natural way of operating. They engage with challenge from a place of readiness rather than dread, because they have built the relationship with difficulty that turns it from a threat into a proving ground. They know what they are capable of under pressure, because they have put themselves under pressure deliberately and found out. They have relationships that are real, built on honest expression rather than careful management, on genuine boundaries rather than resentful accommodation, on the kind of showing up that only a person who has their own life in order can sustain. They make decisions cleanly, without the extended internal negotiation that plagues the person who has not built a clear relationship with their own values and standards. The decision that aligns with who they are is obvious, and they make it. They fail better. The failures are real and they cost something real, but they do not take the hard you down. Because the hard you has a relationship with failure that extracts the lesson and returns to the work, rather than spiraling into a crisis of identity. This is the life that hardness builds, not in spite of the difficulty it requires, because of it. Chapter 10, The Last Soft Version. This is the last time. The last time you accept a standard from yourself that you know is below what you are capable of. The last time you let the reasonable excuse win when the real thing was available. The last time you choose the comfortable version of your life over the real one. Not because you have reached some dramatic turning point, not because something external has changed, because you have decided. And the decision, made clearly and without the softness that used to negotiate it away before it could take hold, changes everything downstream. Every choice from this point forward gets made by a different version of you, the version that has decided. The version that has chosen the hard life not as punishment, but as the only life that actually matches what you are and what you are capable of and what you came here to do. The soft version served a purpose. It protected you when protection was what you needed. It allowed you to survive circumstances that required survival mode. It gave you the grace of ease during periods when ease was genuinely necessary. You can be grateful for it. You can honor what it did for you. And then you can let it go. Because the season it served is over, and a new one has begun. One that requires not the protected version of you, but the full version, the real version, The hard version that does not flinch from what is available and does not settle for what is merely comfortable. The last soft version ends here. Conclusion, go be hard. There is nothing left to understand before you begin. You know what the hard you believes. You know what it costs to stay soft. You know how discipline actually works and what real standards look like and how hardness and love are not in conflict. You know what life tests and how the hard you responds and what is built on the other side of the process. You have everything you need. Go be hard. Not tomorrow. Not after one more audiobook or one more planning session or one more moment of preparation that is actually a moment of postponement wearing a productive disguise. Now, in the next moment that asks who you are, in the next small choice between the easy version and the real one, in the next opportunity to hold the standard when lowering it would be so much simpler. Choose the hard version. Not because it is easy, because it is yours, because the life it builds is the one you have always known you were capable of living, because the person it produces is the one you have always known you were capable of being. You are done being the soft version. Go be the hard one.